Hey, welcome to Faith and Calm. This is class number 194. I'm not quite sure what the advertised title was on this. I know what I was said I was going to talk
My
about.
part is about watch the groundswell of support for Israel around the world.
Okay.
Okay,
The
and
top video is the Frenchies. The second video there is going to be the singing.
What do you mean the top video?
And so it didn't come out with names on them. Okay.
Oh my God.
And
So
they're very loud, but
that's the French guys.
this is the French.
And what's that?
This is the singing, you said.
What?
Singing? You said the soldiers singing?
But I should have more than that.
No, that's all that was sent. Two videos.
Okay, fine.
Okay.
I'll do whatever. Okay, good.
Okay. That's what I got.
Oh, you didn't have the Pentecostal gathering?
No, I did not get
no.
the Pentecostal
Okay,
gathering.
Okay, never mind. It'll be okay.
No, I did not get it. Okay. All right. Right to it. So I was going to call this class Pain and Pleasure, because, we're in Adar. And in Adar, the rabbis say, Misha nechnas Adar marbim besimcha. One who enters Adar has to increase in joy, meaning that you're already happy. And Adar, you have to do even more. What if you're not happy? What if you're in pain? What if you're in suffering? What if you're in Gaza right now? What if you've got relatives in Gaza? So this is the dilemma, pain and suffering. How do you pull these two things together? I mean, there are times where, it sounds like it's, you just have to put a smile on and, pretend and fake it or something like that. So how are you supposed to actually be happy and joyous when sometimes you don't feel like happy and joyous and you're just ordered to do it? And that's what I'm going to dig into today. That's the topic. And I'm going to try and boil it down and make it as simple as possible. So there's a couple of sources that I'm going to use to try and help us understand. The first one comes from the Shulchan Aruch, the Code of Jewish Law, and the written by Rabbi Yosef Karo in the 1500s. And then the Mappa, the explanation, was written by Moshe Isserles. Moshe Karo was Sephardi and Moshe Isserles was Ashkenazi. He was going to write his own Shulchan Aruch, but then he saw Yosef Karo already did a great job, so he said, I just have to write a cover for it. Now, what Shulchan Aruch means, by the way, Shulchan Aruch means a set table. Because that when you come and sit down, you have to have everything on the table, the silverware, the plates, the food, everything has to be all ready to eat, Otherwise people go, what is this, and so forth. So the idea of setting a table is, it's all set. All the laws of Judaism are all set. And Rosso Caro wrote the tablecloth, mappa, that's what it's called. So that's sort of cute, but that's the story. So you open up the Shulchan Aruch, and it begins with the following line. It says, Shavisi Hashem negdi tamid, that I put Hashem always in front of me. Before he goes into all the laws, he says, this is what you got to have in mind, that there's a God. God is the reality of the world. And he is constantly aware of everything going on in the world because it's all part of him. And therefore, we should always be aware that, there's no vacations, no time off. God is always watching what we're doing, which your first reaction might be a little bit of fear and a little bit of worry about this whole situation. Hopefully by the end of the class, that won't be your feeling anymore. And you'll really understand a much deeper way of what it means that Shavisi Hashem neged tamid, that I always put Hashem in front of me. At the end, now it has the Orach Chaim, the first of the four sections of the Shulchan Aruch, has four sections. It deals with the daily laws. So it starts out with Modani. It talks about what you do every morning, washing your hands, everything else. And then it gets into the holidays and Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur. And then finally, at the end, it deals with the laws of Purim. And those are the smaller, the quote minor holidays. And the very last one it dealt with was the holiday of Purim Katan. Purim Katan we had last week, Friday. That's the small Purim because that doesn't happen every year. And the Shulchan Aruch says that actually, though, it is also called Purim, and there are customs that you're supposed to do just like on Purim. So, for example, some people say we actually read the Megillah, but definitely everybody agrees that you should at least have some sort of a special meal. So the Moshe Isserles says on this, he says, yeah, that's what you should do. You should make a meal, have a festive meal. You don't have to get chicker like Purim, but you should at least get somewhat happy eating because Tov le mishtatami, as it says in the Mishle, in Proverbs. It says a good heart is always mishta, always having a feast. Or more literally in modern English, you should always be partying. Basically, that's what it's saying. Now, if you look at this and you think about it, this is really very unusual. The Shulchan Aruch begins with, you should always be aware that God is over you and he's got a camera on and he's watching everything you're doing. I'm in fear. And then the end is, you know what you should do after this? You should party. Life mishnah, always party. I hope you're going to see that there's like this parallel that I'm making. Are we supposed to be in fear? Or are we supposed to be in joy? Are we supposed to be scared? Or are we supposed to be happy? We're told to be happy. It's Adar. But are we, it sounds okay. So I'm going to explain a little about this. Because in the Friday night davening, we also say something very unusual. We say,
I've lost it.
Yeah. So what we say in the Friday night davening, Friday night, is we say, there's a line, I don't know if you see it, but it's towards the end of the davening, and it says that no saying code, no saying. No name the kodesh le'am medushne oneg. That God gives holiness to the nation who is medushne. Medushne is from shemen. Dashan means saturated in oneg, saturated in peace. And neither should say durchgedringen. He's filled up with it. He's got ectus. Jews are people who are always happy. We're always soaked in happiness, like oil. You know what happens with your latkes, right? It soaks and soaks and soaks and soaks more oil. So that's the Jewish people. They are in constant state of happiness or bliss or even ecstasy, if you want to even really drive it to the home. Now, does that sound like the Jewish people? You're Jewish people. Is your basic feeling? I am so constantly happy. This is the people, the Jewish people. There's no kvetching. We're never complaining. Everything is always good. Is that a good description of the Jewish people? It doesn't sound like the Jewish people. Okay. So to get to the answer here of how you can have joy, simcha, happiness, and Adar, and at the same time, there's things that are not going so well, we're going to look at one more place, and this place is in the Gemara. In the Gemara I think it's in Tanis. No, it's in Makos. That story at the end of Gemara Makos. It says that there were four of the great rabbis from the time of the right after the second temple was destroyed. It was around 10 years after the temple was destroyed, and they were traveling to Rome. The Gemara doesn't say why they were traveling. Probably they were traveling because the Senate was there, the Caesar was there, and there was a lot of persecution of the Jews after the destruction of the temple, and they were probably asking the Romans to lay off. But anyway, it says that they went by boat, and this was Rabbi Akiva. Now you see that we have some great rabbis. We had Rabbi Akiva, Rabbi Yeshua, Rabbi Gamliel, and Rabbi Eliezer ben Azariah, some of the four of the greatest rabbis of that generation. And while they were traveling to Rome, while they were traveling to Rome, still 120 mil, which is 120 kilometers away from Rome, they heard the shouts and screams of joy and celebrating from Rome. And three of the rabbis started to cry. And Rabbi Akiva was famous for this. He was laughing. So the other rabbis say, why are you laughing? And of course, Rabbi Akiva answers the question with a question. It's a Jewish thing. And he says, why are you crying? And they say, we're crying because how can it be? The temple is in destruction. The Jews are being persecuted. Their anti-Semitism is beyond the belief. And these people are having a great time and having fun and celebrating. And, as the Romans certainly knew how to do, they really threw a party and they're worshiping their idols and they're having a great time. So we're crying. So why are you laughing, Rabbi Akiva? Rabbi Akiva says a very interesting line. He says, if this is how the people who are violating God's will, Ratzon, his desire, are being rewarded, then how much more so will the Jews get a reward because they do the will of Hashem? Which sounds like Rabbi Akiva was saying, okay, I'm happy because eventually Mashiach's going to come and the Jews will get much more than the Romans ever got in terms of presents, in terms of celebrating. But you have to ask the question, why was he laughing then? That's 2,000 years at least before Mashiach comes. So I don't understand.
I got it.
I don't understand why it's, I don't understand why Rabbi Akiva, it's still a question, why is he happy then? Why is he laughing then? And why should the Romans get any reward? They don't deserve any reward. If there were evil, wicked people who just love to celebrate and party and hedonistic and have orgies and gladiators and all this other kind of stuff going on. So why should they get a reward? And then why is Rabbi Akiva even asking why they're crying? Because it's obvious why they're crying. The temple is, they said, the temple's destroyed and these people are celebrating. So that's pretty obvious too. And then the biggest question here is, why is Rabbi Akiva comparing the joy of the Jews to the Romans? Oh, they have a great Viennese table. They have a beautiful smorgasbord, and they have all the kinds of drinks that they want. But you know what? It's small scale. We'll have a bigger one later on. Is that really what the whole thing that Jews are waiting for Mashiach, is to be able to celebrate like the Romans? We'll have better parties than the Romans had. We'll have bigger parties. It's something needs to be explained. And this is what the Alter Rebbe explained in a very interesting mimer in Torah Or. And what he explained is as follows, and this is where the heart of the story comes in. So pay attention here. So he basically says, the Alter Rebbe says, all joy, every pleasure, life itself, everything is about realizing where is being rooted in where it comes from. The Eibishter is the source of all reality. God is the source of all reality. And therefore, true joy and real happiness has to come through a way from directly to God. However, there's another kind of joy that exists in the world. And that is the joy that comes through a way of nefila, which means falling down. When you're walking in the mountains, like in Kakiak Park or somewhere, near Muncie, and so wherever, and you fall down, it hurts, and you may break something and so forth. So too, there is godliness that comes down in a way which is disconnected, life in pleasure, which is disconnected with God. And that happiness is there, but it's not the same quality as what you have when you're directly connecting to God. Let's make this a little more clear. There's a principle about in Judaism that especially in Kabbalah, that the godliness as it comes into this world is too powerful and sometimes to actually unite and be part of this world. And therefore it has to come in a broken way, in a transformed way. Sort of like when you have a word, which can mean a lot of things, but if you take the letters apart of the word, you don't have that much there anymore. This broken pleasure is the source of all of these non-holy pleasures and delights in the world. And those pleasures really should be described as distractions. And there's a lot of distractions. Human beings over the last 5,000 years have developed a very big industry of distractions. There's movies, there's Hollywoods, there's vacations, which are all could be fine. But when they're disconnected with our purpose and with God and so forth, you know what happens? They're fun for a while, and then you feel bad afterwards. The example that I heard, you may not relate to it or you may not, it depends on what your problems are, and so for some people really like cheesecake, but afterwards, if you eat a lot of cheesecake, you really feel bad about yourself. But when at the beginning, when you saw that cheesecake on the table, you said, this is my salvation. This is going to be great. And it's talking to you and it's advertising and it's saying, this is going to feel really wonderful and so forth. And then you eat too much of it and then you think, oh my gosh, the pleasures and distractions of this world, because they're not connected to the infinite one, to God, they're always transitory. They can exist for a while, but you know what? After a while, you got to go find another pleasure. And that is what the world is doing. They run from one addiction to another addiction, to one pleasure to another pleasure. And you know what? After a few weeks, it's not happening anymore. So they try this girl and they try this guy and they try this and they try this and so forth. And you know what? It doesn't work because it's not connected to the infinite one. It's not connected to God. True pleasure is this natural state of the Jewish soul. And that's when you're connected and you're swimming with Hashem and you don't need to do anything. You don't need to manufacture anything. That is the natural state of the soul. And when you're connected on that level, then everything is wonderful. So what was Rabbi Akiva basically saying? He was saying the following. He was saying, you think the Romans are celebrating now? Yeah, but you know what they're celebrating? That is a distraction kind of celebration, a distraction pleasures of a lot of fun little hedonistic stuff. And if you're going to cry about that, if you're going to think that was what's wonderful, then you really have no clue of what it means to have infinite pleasure and infinite joy when you're connected to Hashem, because it never stops, it never ends. It doesn't need to be constantly run after for something else. There's a story I heard that there was a chassid of the Alter Rebbe, his name Hillel Paritcher, and he said, if the world would realize what is the pleasures of connecting with God, of praying and of Torah and so forth, nobody would run after any other of the lights and pleasures and taivas of the world. So Rabbi Wai said he was once telling this to a guy who was very big into the other kind of pleasures of the world. And he said, obviously, this guy is clueless. He has, he's one of these religious fanatics, and he has no idea what the wonderful pleasures that you could have in this physical world, the restaurants and everything else. And Rabbi Wai says, I think the story is actually the opposite direction. And that is, you're constantly going to spend your life running after the kinds of effervescent distractions in the world, but you really won't know what real happiness and what real joy is. So that's what Rabbi Akiva was saying, and that's what we're talking about with Adar. When we say that, just like when you diminish your happiness when you go into Av, meaning if you know that the same appreciation that there is of pain, of suffering in this world, can come you to realize, what true happiness would be like. And this is another thing that I want to bring out from what Rabbi Akiva was saying. And this is really important. This is a very good point to understand. And that is, he's saying, how do you combine pain together with joy? How can you be happy when you're in such pain? There's a letter from the Lubavitcher Rebbe to Eli Wiesel. Eli Wiesel and the Rebbe had a lot of conversations because Eli Wiesel was a Holocaust survivor. He was that kid in the picture, surrendering to the Nazis and so forth. As a kid, his father was with him in the camps and his father died. Anyway, he came out of the Holocaust and he was really a broken person, but he came from a religious family. He came from Vizhnasher Hasidim, and he never really stopped being, connecting to Judaism. But for a long time, he had a grudge against God, and he decided that he was never going to get married. And the Rebbe kept trying to encourage him to get married. And one time he wrote him a letter, a 7-page letter. And in that letter, the Rebbe said an interesting thing. The Rebbe said, do you think that those people, which people had the biggest complaints in the Torah with God about how he's running the world? It's the people who were the most holiness. Avram Avinu said to God, he said, why are you going to treat these people? Why are you going to wipe out the whole city of people? I don't understand how the judge of the world can do such a thing to his creations. And Moshe also said, you know what? I said, he said, why are you being so bad to the Jewish people in Egypt? He was complaining to God. And the same true with a lot of the prophets, and so forth. They complained to God. Now, the Rebbe says, do you think that these guys gave up and stopped believing in God because they saw terrible things happening? No, they had tremendous faith. And at the same time, they knew that there's a God behind the entire situation. And everything that was happening is from God. Basically, what they're saying is something that we actually see very much in current events. There is a tremendous amount of pain about what happened recently in Israel. And there are people with their families that are captured in Gaza. There are people who have lost their children in the war. There's a lot of suffering and there's a lot of pain. And yet, when they do these surveys of the Jewish people, the non-religious people, they say, has your faith in God increased or decreased? Has your practice and your observance of Judaism increased or not? 33% of them say we're more involved with God than ever before. This is a fascinating thing, and you cannot make a formula or an equation about how this works. Somehow there is a thing in the soul that says, you know what? I can't understand God, and I couldn't possibly understand God. So when I see things that are so painful, in a certain way, I realize this is a sign that God is very much with me. And therefore, I can have more joy and more connection with God than I had before. The very, very suffering is the same thing. I don't know if you've ever seen this, you may not have, but I have. And sometimes people who are going through a very difficult situation, or in the middle of their difficult situation, and it starts getting worse than they ever thought before, and they all of a sudden they break out in laughter, like, this is crazy. Another thing. And they're laughing. They're really, truly laughing. What is it in the soul that can connect these two complete opposites? Obviously, it's the infinite part that's inside of ourselves that doesn't necessarily, which can say, actually, pain itself is coming from God. And therefore, I may not see it, but you know what? Joy is also coming from God, and I don't know what's going to really manufacture that either. And that is really the story of Adar and the joy of Adar and the pleasure of Adar and what Rabbi Akiva was telling to the other rabbis. He was saying, you know what? Yes, I also feel a lot of the pain. I'm not living in La La Land. In fact, Rabbi Akiva was killed by the Romans, as we know. So he knew exactly how bad and evil and wicked the Romans were. And yet, if he'd seen the Nazis and their celebrations and, and the Hitler Gruth Guard and their celebrations, same thing. That kind of happiness and joy, I don't want. I wouldn't give away a minute of my life for something that's just basically a stupid distraction. And they sound like they're having a lot of fun, but you know what? There really isn't any truth to it at all. I want the true reality, the true joy, the true happiness, the true celebration. And that is what Adar is about. Really celebrating the truth of how connected we are with God. It may look like externally there's a lot of cover-ups and there's a lot of lies and there's a lot of false advertising about what's fun and so forth in this world. And we don't say that you shouldn't have as much as fun as you want, but not in a way that it takes you away from God. It's only in the way when it brings you closer to God. So go out and do things and have fun. And you know what? That's Adar. And be happy and know that actually the source of all this happiness and all this joy and all this pleasure for Adar is really coming from Hashem. And that's where it is. And we have to know constantly, Shavisi Hashem negdi tamid. I put Hashem in front of me always, realizing, you know what? In everything that's happening, the good and what looks good, what looks bad, it's God. And when I'm aware and I work on myself, and it's a lot of hard work, then you know what? The more I realize that there's God before me, then you know what? Mish tov lev mishta tamid, you can always be partying. So the two things are like a bookend. The whole Jewish life. Orach chaya means the way of life. Tamid means always. Tamid, in the beginning, it says tov lev mishta tamid at the end, and it says Shavisi Hashem tamid, always in front of me in the beginning. And that also, by the way, is what the I think it's the Menachem Mendel of Chernobyl said, that the letters for Adar is Aleph Daled Resh, and that means the second letters are Daled Resh, which means dar, to dwell. And so when the Aleph, when God is dwelling in us, then you can always be happy. So when you always are dwelling with Hashem, then you can always be happy in every situation. I hope I tried to boil that down a little bit. It was a deep idea, and give you some examples. And I will let my wife now bring you
Can I
up.
ask a question?
Ask questions. Yes, that's the point.
So this may be overly simple, but what is a good way to transition when to that natural state of joy that's here? I'm not denying that it's here, even though sometimes it doesn't feel like it. Sorry, I'm a little distracted. Sorry, do you mind muting for a sec?
Sorry.
Thank you. So like, what's a good way to transition if it's hard to access? Like, do we need to back up? I get mixed messages. Do we need to do something? Do I just need to believe it and wait? Like, there are moments where it doesn't feel like I know it logically. I heard it enough times, but I just am asking for like a piece of wisdom on the transitioning back when it doesn't feel
Right.
like
Right.
present. Yeah.
Right. Not a simple task. And you know what? Give yourself the space. If you're feeling something that's not happy, then you don't have to like suppressing it and push in and saying it's not really happening and putting on a fake face. I'm not sure that really helps that much and so forth. I do think that what really helps is realizing, what, paying attention to the fact that you, like those people were saying they're in pain, right? And it's just crazy. And where are you, God, and so forth. And of course, he is there. He's not, but I'm not able to wrap my mind around why this is happening to me right now. And therefore, my mind is not on the level of the infinite one. And that's okay. It's not, I don't need that. At the same time, I think that also that what is that if when we focus and we cook in our own juices and so forth, that also makes it the most difficult. So many different techniques for getting out of this. Sometimes it's just physical exercise. Just get outside, run, jump, do something physical and so forth. That will certainly help. Just to realize, what, there's a bigger world than just me and my problems out there. And I think that helps a lot also, and we know that. You just go and do something for someone else. The story that I heard was, a guy comes home from work and he was just yelled at the office and it was a terrible day and so forth. And he's got a little kid on the floor and the little kid wants to play, he sees his father home and he wants to play. Are you going to try and you say, yeah, I'm so, you don't even talk to me. I'm so upset by what happened today. I just want to go into my room and into a cave and run away from everybody and so forth, which, I understand that. I understand that feeling entirely. But you know what? When you sit down and you start playing with the blocks and having fun with them and, kids have natural joy, and all of a sudden that pulls something outside of you and you realize, you know what, well, life is pretty good, and so forth. So I think it's that's partially what it is to realize not all about me and it's not all about my problems. You can't, nobody else should tell you that when you're suffering. That's not the right answer at all. But you can tell yourself that line sometimes. It's not all about me and it's not all about my suffering. And there's a lot of good going on in this world. And it really helps. Did you have any words of advice on this, Shlomo? You've been through a little bit of difficulty, yeah. So I'll let my wife take over the microphone.
Thank you so much. I took some notes. Thank you.
Okay.
Yeah, question, and I thought of one thing, which is to sing. Whether it's in English or if it's a Hebrew song, or to just have a go-to song that when you get into a situation where you have to get yourself out of it, you just start singing that happy song, like if it's Ya'aseh Shalom or sing Havana Gila, anything, whatever it is to sort of
whatever it is
counter it. But do you remember that there was a story about a man who was dying and it was Simchas Torah or something, and they his friends came to get him off of his deathbed and dragged him down to the shul and started dancing with him, and he got better.
It's a long story.
Wasn't that a story about
Yeah, it's out there, but yeah, I know what you're talking about. Yeah, yeah, I know the story.
faking it until you make it or something? Or what would you call that? That the joy brings the turnaround? I mean,
Um, it's a long story.
transformation?
I don't want to go into that one right now. Usually there's another point for that story, but I'll think about it. Okay, how about that? Get back to you.
Okay,
Okay, thank you.
thank you.
Thank you.
Okay.
Make sure it's recording.
Okay. And it's recording. Hello, everybody. Good to see everybody. So nice to see everybody. So, okay. So does anybody have any other questions before I begin? And yeah, Shane, I'm going to say what I'm going to say, and then God willing, we'll address what you just said. So, so I want to say, as I always do, there are four things that I like to begin with. Number one, we're in an extraordinary time. And the reason the Lubavitcher Rebbe told us in 1992 that we are in the unfolding of the redemption. And the Lubavitcher Rebbe also hinted broadly that he is Mashiach. And the Rebbe never talked about himself personally. The Rebbe never said I for like 40, however many years. He never referred to himself. He always, any praise he always pushed off to his father-in-law. Oh, it's because of the precedent the father-in-law set. And all of a sudden he started giving hints that he is Mashiach. And he told us that the grave will have no dominion over Mashiach, which is an interesting thing. And so why do I hold so tightly to this thing that the Rebbe said, that we've entered, we're crossing the threshold into Geula? Because my father taught me. My father was actually from a frum family. Both of my parents were from frum families before the Holocaust, and they went through the Holocaust. My parents were Holocaust survivors, and they were separated from their parents. And their parents, only one grandparent, mine, survived the war, and she was the least frum of them all. She was a powerhouse, but she was the least frum of them all. And they didn't have it. They had been teenagers. They didn't have enough to cling to, so they were not from after the war. So, but my father was very, very good in investing, and he was. I could talk about my father another time, but he always taught me, if you buy a good stock, what you have to do is don't touch it. He said, when the market goes up, when it goes down, it goes up, when it goes down, you just hold on to it. If it's a good stock, you just ride with it. So the Rebbe is a good stock. The Rebbe was never wrong about any prediction that he made in public. Never, never, never. And so I'm riding with the Rebbe, and it's a good investment. So so number one, we're in an extraordinary time. Number two, our souls were handpicked to be in this time. Number three, we have all the tools we need. We have the Torah, which is our guidebook, and the mitzvahs, which are our power tools. And number four, what we're doing tonight actively advances the cause of the redemption. The Rebbe said the fastest way to speed up the redemption is to learn about it. So so tonight I want to say one more point here, that we're talking about Purim, we're talking about Haman, we're talking, Yeskel Shimon talked about Amalek, and it says that in the end of time, Amalek is not gone, right? In the Purim story, Haman was gone, and many of his supporters were gone, and there were 75,000 bad guys that the Jews killed, and it's written about. Actually, do you know that the Megillah was entered into the annals of Persian history? It's a state document in Persia. So anyway, a lot of the Amalekites were killed, but not all of them. And Amalek is going to be done by Melech HaMashiach. He's going to be put to his rest, to his complete rest, by Melech HaMashiach. And since the Rebbe says we are already we're crossing over into the redemption. In this horrible thing that happened on October 7th, it seems to me that the Amalekites are being flushed into the open. There are anti-Semites that they're anti-Semites in private. Not anymore. It just flushes them out in the public, and you can see them. They're coming out of the woodwork. Anti-Semites here, anti-Semites there, and it's to get rid of them. It's for the purpose of getting rid of them. And just like how could anybody hours, days after that horrendous massacre, which the world has seen nothing like it since the Holocaust, nothing like it, and people are already anti-Semitic. They're already saying ridiculous things about Israel. So these. It's a special breed. It's just a special breed, and I sincerely believe they're being flushed out, and that's one of the purposes of what's happening now. So tonight I want to just say 3 things about Mika Amcha. It says in our literature, Mika Amcha, who is like your people? There's nobody like the Jewish people. They're just so incredible. So I want to say 3 little things about how incredible the Jewish people are. And then I want to say 3 things about how there's there's the flushing out of the anti-Semites, but there's also a groundswell of support for Israel from all different corners of the world. So first let me do Mika Amcha, who is like the Jewish people. So, Yaskel Shimon talked last week about this woman who she's highly placed in the Israeli government, and her name is Distel Atbarian, and so he told you last week about how she regrets. She said she regrets everything she had to do with fomenting discord in Israel. As you know, the discord in Israel was gigantic before the October 7th massacre. It was gigantic. It was at a peak, and people were, my dear cousin who passed away, who was brilliant, absolutely brilliant. He said, "My dear cousin, I hate to tell you, but someday I see civil war ahead in Israel." And anyway, she said she made statements about regretting. She said, "This is what happened. We were at odds with each other, and I was part of that. I was part of fomenting that discord." And she said, and Hamas saw, and that's why they attacked. And so so I was reading a little bit more about her, and to me, this is a Jew. What happened? October 7th, the morning of October 7th, she's sleeping. She didn't know anything. The morning of October 7th, she's sleeping, and her partner wakes her up. And her partner tells her, "Get up, the world is being destroyed." And as soon as she heard what was happening, the first thing that popped into her head was, she's talking to herself, "You did this. You weakened the nation. You wakened the nation, and that's why this happened." Just an incredible thing. A Jew is so honest. A Jew is so, it's just incredible. It's just incredible. And since then, she's doing things to, hopefully bring Jews back together. That's number 1. Distal Arbatian. Atbarian, sorry. Secondly, I'm going to tell a little story. There's a Crown Heights guy, 6 kids. On the morning of October 7th, when he heard, or not the morning, when he probably heard on Sunday, October 8th, and he heard what's happening in Israel, and he said to his wife, he's married with 6 children. He said to his wife, I'm in the reserves. I served in the IDF, as you know. If they call me, I'm going. If they call me up to active reserve duty, then I'm going. Now, since he's married with 6 kids, he's actually exempt from his reserve duty, but he felt, this is my place, I must go. So he went, and he went even I think he went, he's been in Israel since October 9th fighting, and he just got notice that he gets 3 weeks vacation. So he didn't really want to go. He didn't really want to go back to New York. He really what he wanted for these 3 weeks, but he can't afford anything like that. He hasn't been earning any money to speak of for the past several months, but he really would if he could have his heart's desire, it would be to bring his wife and 6 children to Israel for the 3 weeks. And so he looked into it. He called and he found out, El Al gives discounts, a 25% discount to the family of soldiers if they want to come. But with a wife and 6 kids, that's still a tremendous amount of money. And so he doesn't know what he's going to do. And that night he goes out to a restaurant that he and his friends heard about a restaurant in Yerushalayim where any soldier can get a meal for free. Nice restaurant. And so they went and they had a wonderful meal. And he's a very nice guy. So at the end, he walked up to the back and he said, whoever's responsible for these free meals, I just want to tell you thank you. It's so nice of you. And so one of the guys in the back that he talked to said, take some food home for your wife. He said, oh, I'd love to, but my wife is in New York with my 6 children. And the guy said, how long has it been since you saw them? And he said, since the beginning of the war, I haven't seen them. And then he opened up and he said, I would love to bring them here, but that's like something that's totally out of the question for me. And so the 2 guys looked at each other and then they turned to him and they said, call your wife. Call your wife. They're sponsoring it. His wife and his kids. And the guy can't even believe it. And they said, get on the phone, tell your wife, start packing. She's coming with the kids. And then they said, and are you going to have a place for them to stay? And he said, no, of course not. And they said, we have a little apartment in Harnof. It'll be good for you and for your wife and your kids. And so anyway, it's just like, who is like the Jewish people? There's just nobody like the Jewish people. It's just amazing. So then now I'm going to show you, this is a picture. I hope this is the right one. I have 2 videos. Yeah, this is the right one, I believe. And so these are new recruits. These are these are young guys who are just being recruited into the Israeli army. And, the vast majority of Israelis are not from. Look at how I'm going to share my screen. First, I'll make this bigger. And then I'm going to push it off to over here. No, don't start yet. Don't start yet. Okay, 1 minute. I'm going to push it to the beginning. I'm going to move it. I can't move it. Isn't that interesting? Okay, I'm going to share my screen now. And here we go. Okay, now remember, these are new guys. They're just going into the army now, and they're not religious, but listen to them. Okay, here we go. It's serve Hashem in gladness. Come before him with happiness. Ivdu es Hashem b'simcha. Boa l'fanav birnana. These are... It's incredible. They're not from, and they're saying, serve Hashem in happiness. Yeah, let's go. You never would have seen anything like this before. Anyway, okay, I'm going to stop share, and or can I go straight to the second share? Okay. Oh, I didn't get we couldn't get the film up, but I will tell you that people are blown away by what's happening in Israel. Non-Jews are blown away. There was a meeting of the National Religious Broadcasters. It's called the NRB. They're Christian. It's an organization of Christian broadcasters, and they meet in a convention this year. And what was the topic of this year's convention? The topic of this year's convention was honoring Israel. And there's like 1,000 people, 1,000 Christian broadcasters at this banquet with nice tables. And what kind of film are they showing? They're showing stuff like this. And the Christian leader of them, who's the speaker, is saying that he's telling them, he shows them pictures of this, and there's many pictures of the soldiers before they go out to battle, singing songs to Hashem, singing love songs to Hashem. And he shows them one of them, and he says, "You guys, I want to tell you, this is not a Pentecostal this film I'm showing you. It's not a film of a Pentecostal gathering. It's a bunch of soldiers going out to war. That's what they do in Israel. That's how they do it." So anyway, and it's beautiful. It's true that they're like fired up with love of Hashem and love of their fellow people. So then in Brazil, I'm going to tell you this also. In Brazil, there were 500,000 people who got together. To demand the impeachment of President Lula, who compared the Jewish response in Gaza to the Nazis. And so there's 500,000 people who called for his impeachment, and all sorts of people. So people are standing up when they're hearing nonsense. They're standing up to it. And this is. I'm just going to show one more thing. Let's see. Do I have to? Let's close this one, and I'm going to do a new share. Okay, I'm going to do a new share screen, and first I'm going to open this one up. So just a minute. No, don't start yet. I didn't share you. Okay, and okay, so this is a bunch of people who where is it? It should be here. Guess it's this one. Is it this? Let's try this. Can you see it? Yeah, you can see it. So this, okay, I'll show you. There's a bunch of people from France who decided to come to Israel to support the soldiers specifically. And just look what they're doing. There's a bunch of people from France. They decided these poor soldiers, these poor Israeli soldiers, they've been fighting month after month after month. They don't have proper, a lot of times they don't have, their bodies are taking a terrible beating. They're up for hours. They're sleeping on the ground. So they decided these are a bunch of massage therapists from France who came to give therapy to all these guys because they've been life has not been easy for them. So it's so sweet. They're volunteers. They came just with their own money to do this.
That's amazing.
Yeah, it's so cute. Yeah.
Are they Jewish people or not?
I imagine some of them are, and a lot of them are not.
Right. Some of them have yarmulkes.
Yeah.
It's exactly the perfect thing to do.
It's
so needed.
Yeah. Just a lot of yeah. It's just very sweet.
Looks like they're part of an organization. They're wearing their T-shirts.
They are? I didn't see it.
I saw two or three of them wearing like a white T-shirt.
Even acupuncture.
But calming the central nervous system or whatever it is that gets, Sori probably knows more about it, but that is so in such a state of heightened vigilance and everything.
Look at this, they're cupping him. It's so cute. Everybody's got a different therapy. Wait, acupuncture.
This is fabulous.
Yeah.
When was this, Shalamis?
Just recently, very recently. Yeah.
וואו, היה מושלם. באמת, הכי נחת שהיה לי 4 חודשים. תודה רבה לך.
Thank you so much. Okay. Yadenu la chayalim shalom. Okay, good. Very nice. Okay, good. I'm going to stop the share. And so there are, as much as horrible anti-Semitism is coming out, and it's because the Amalekites, I believe, are being flushed out in this era, this very decisive era. So too, supporters of Israel are blossoming, coming, they're blooming like the springtime. They're just blooming all over the place. And they're not afraid. They're not afraid to support Israel. It's so beautiful. Okay, so and Shana, my whole life is a million techniques to bring myself back to happiness because I'm a very poor depressive. So I have essays, I have tons of things I've come up with for myself, tricks and reasoning I mentioned on a previous session and somebody started to do it. I think sometimes when you're really down, it's the Yetzer that's talking to you. The Yetzer is just talking up a storm. And the more you listen, the more the Yetzer will talk up a storm. And soon he'll bring evidence that Hashem is not good to you in this way. And look what's happening to you in this way. And look what's happening to you in this way. And you got such a bad ticket. Look what's happening. And so when the Yetzer, when I've allowed, usually I don't allow the Yetzer to talk that much. But if I'm in a physically weakened position, then the Yetzer really can talk. If I'm tired, if I'm it's important to keep up your physical strength to fight the Yetzer. And but if it gets really bad, I pull out my Yetzer watch, which I've shown before. It's a yellow notepad, a simple yellow notepad. And I write down, what is the Yetzer saying? And when you write it down, you just don't let him just talk like he's you. You write it down. Oh, he's saying this, he's saying that, he's saying that. Then you can answer him because you have a godly soul. The godly soul is ready to answer. But first you have to divorce him from you. Those thoughts that are going through your mind, that's really the Yetzer talking up a storm. So I write it down. I like a news reporter. Oh, what's he saying now? Okay, let me write it down. And then I write what my answer is. And I have an answer because I'm a Jew with a godly soul, and you have an answer for him. But if you just let him talk, it leads to tremendous depression. So that's what I would say for now. And I'm going to turn off the recording, and anybody who wants can ask any